Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Bryce Underwood, Michigan, heading on the road, playing Nebraska in what feels like, I think for a lot of us Michigan fans, one of the more important games that Michigan will be in all of 2025. Now, I'm not just saying that to be hyperbolic. I think there's some legitimate reasons why we can believe this. Number one, you got a bye week next week. Yeah, close your eyes and just envision the feel around this Michigan program if they are 3-1, a top 20 team in the country going into the bye week. And then close your eyes and envision Michigan losing this football game and say, hey, 2-2 outside of the top 25. That's a big swing in the landscape of the 2025 year. But probably more importantly than that, it's an opportunity for this Michigan offense, of which we know can be dynamic and we know can go score points. It's an opportunity for this Michigan offense to go on the road against a quality defense and show they can be that kind of offense against some of the better defenses that we're going to see in this conference. That's the bigger storyline. Now, there's a stark difference between where we are at right now and where we were at in 2024. In 2024, we knew this version, the version of the Michigan offense that we saw against Central Michigan, we knew that version didn't exist, right? We didn't have the offensive line. We certainly didn't have the quarterback play, didn't have the difference makers. We knew Michigan didn't have a chance to run this kind of offense in the 2024 year. Now we know we can, because we've seen it against Central Michigan. We've seen it against New Mexico. Now it's time to go do it against a quality opponent. And if Michigan can show that they can go on the road against a very solid Nebraska defense and go be dynamic and go be score points, all of a sudden we're looking at this Michigan team in 2025 and saying, hey, this team can do some damage the rest of 2025. That's the biggest storyline. Now, here's the fascinating conversation, at least in my opinion. We got 3 games under our belt. We've seen some really good football from this offense. We've seen some really bad football from this offense. What do we want to see? We kind of know what Michigan does well. What do we want to see from them on the road against Nebraska? That's the conversation I want to get into before we do. And as always, the Michigan fans, appreciate you guys. And it's been, a lot of y'all been rocking with the boys for a while, and it's been a roller coaster for us talking this program over the last 12 months. The amount of support this fan base has shown the boys has been amazing. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into it. Now, we're going to talk a lot about Bryce and what we want to see from Bryce and the concepts that Bryce has really thrived with. But I want to start with this. Something that was non-existent outside of one play against Oklahoma has the opportunity to really thrive in this football game. It's the run game. And as much as we've spent our time talking about Bryce, Justice Haynes has showed he's one of the better running backs, not only in this conference, but in the country. And then you look at this Nebraska defense and say, they're not good against the run. And I think a lot of Nebraska fans that follow this program closely would agree that they don't have the defensive line that we're used to seeing from Nebraska. They've given up almost 5 yards per carry, which is 94th in the country. We did not have the ability to run the football against Oklahoma on the road a couple of weeks ago. I think Michigan has that ability to do so going on the road playing Nebraska. And here's the other part of it is this run game has the opportunity to be really dynamic. I think what got Michigan in a lot of trouble against Oklahoma is they didn't show they wanted to push the ball down the field. Oklahoma was just putting hats in the box, and it's really hard to run against a good defense that's loading the box and trying to stop the run. Michigan showed against Central Michigan, especially with what Bryce can do with his legs. This offense has the opportunity to be a really dynamic rushing offense that can test you in a lot of different ways. Here's the other thing. Not only Bryce's legs, you got a guy in Marlon Klein, probably undersold the importance that Marlon Klein means to this team, not only as a pass catcher. This kid is a hammer when it comes to getting it done as an inline tight end in the run blocking department. And so I'm looking at it and saying you got a quarterback that can do damage. You got tight ends that can block their tails off. Max Bredesen's obviously a very good H-back in the blocking department. And you got a running back in Justice Haynes, who's one of the best in the country. How much success can Michigan have running the football? Feels like a really big storyline because we just saw this Michigan offense run the football really well against Central Michigan. I think they're going to have the opportunity to do it against the Nebraska defense that's not all that good against the run. Best way to settle Bryce in, Give him a run game on the road to lean on, something he did not have against Oklahoma that I think he can have against Nebraska. Number two, spacing on offense. Well, one of the things that we are really starting to understand, there is not a blade of grass that Bryce Underwood can't get the football to. Stark difference between where this Michigan offense was last year. Michigan was so capped in terms of what their passing attack could be. They couldn't really attack the boundary. They couldn't really attack the deeper third. The biggest thing for me with Bryce is how well he attacks the boundary. That ball gets out to the boundary so damn quick. And so you have a thrower of the football, I should say, with Bryce Underwood that can attack the boundary in ways that a lot of quarterbacks can't, which gives you the ability to really space out this defense. And I'll say this, when Michigan goes to the wider splits and really spreads that defense out, they seem to have more success. Not only because I think they have a quarterback that can throw the football all around the football field, but just as importantly, he's a young quarterback. And when you space everybody out, you clear up the picture a little bit in terms of what Bryce is looking at. I think it makes it a little bit easier to understand where he has to go with the football. Here's the other thing, getting him out of the pocket. One, it taps into his athleticism, which I think we quickly learned against Central Michigan. I know many Michigan fans, like myself, been banging the table for that. Yes, he's such a good thrower of the football, but he's also one of the best athletes on the field. If you want to truly maximize what this offense can be, you have to tap in to what he is as an athlete. And when you get him outside of the pocket, number one, I think it clears the picture a little bit. Number two, he's very, very good throwing off platform. Number three, you let him tap into that athleticism. You stress the defense. You give him the ability to go out and use his legs as well. I think if I'm putting on my maize and blue glasses on real quick, the thing that gives me the most optimism heading into this one is I think we're starting to get a feel for what Bryce does really well and where he's most comfortable. And I think keep in mind, like Chip Lindsey's a new offensive coordinator, still trying to learn the personnel on this team. But just as importantly, like Bryce Underwood is a true freshman quarterback. It's not like they've been working together for the last 3 years. And so there are some growing pains. Chip Lindsey has to learn, hey, what does Bryce do really well? What does he not do really well? I feel like as we get farther into the season, we're starting to learn where Bryce is at his best. I think Chip Lindsey is starting to learn where Bryce is at his best. Defensive side of the football, I don't want to ignore that because this is an opportunity for Michigan's defense to show that they can go on the road and dominate a football game too. Derek Moore, right? I think he's the best, maybe outside of Jay Sean Barham. I think he's the best defender on this Michigan defense. And Derek Moore has not been bad, but I don't think he's been that top 50 NFL draft pick that we saw last year at times. You look at Nebraska. Nebraska's really, really good on the inside of that offensive line. Like Justin Evans at center, Rocco Spindler at guard, Henry at guard. They're really good in the interior of that offensive line. I would be very surprised if Michigan's interior defensive line really goes out there and dominates. We'll say this, though, and you can ask the Nebraska fans that follow this program closely. They got question marks the offensive tackle spot. TJ Guy, Derek Moore, Cam Brand, Nate Marshall, Don Nichols, but specifically Derek Moore. And how about this? Jay Sean Barham coming off the edge. I mean, you talk about the best version of this Michigan defense. It includes Jay Sean Barham coming off the edge. Can we dominate with our edge rushers in this football game? It's something that I think we needed to happen against Oklahoma, but didn't. Here's the story, though. You go back and watch that Oklahoma game. Michigan could get after John Mateer, but John Mateer was so good at creating and so good at getting outside the pocket, and the ball was coming out really damn quick. That defensive line didn't have a ton of opportunity to get home. You look at Nebraska and say, Dylan's a really good quarterback, and I ain't going to get up here and say he ain't. Is he the athlete that John Mateer is? Can he get himself out of trouble the way John Mateer can? The answer is no. And so I think Michigan has an opportunity to not only be disruptive, but go out and create some negative plays and force Nebraska behind the chains. And I look at that and say that needs to be the biggest advantage on the football field. These edge rushers for Michigan going up against tackles for Nebraska that I don't think are elite. Whether it's Derek Moore, whether it's TJ Guy coming back, whether it's a guy like Jay Sean Barham. And the other thing I love about Jay Sean Barham is he allows Jimmy Rolder to get on the football field more. When you move Jay Sean Barham as an edge rusher, and all of a sudden Cole Sullivan can get on the field and Jimmy Rolder can get on the field. they can play. I mean, Jimmy Rolder and Cole Sullivan have been two really good football players for Michigan to start the year. How about this? Last one we'll probably talk about tackle in space. We got two more actually. Tackle in space. Nebraska's been really good at getting the football to their playmakers in space. Over half of their passing yards have come after the catch. Dana Holgerson's doing a really good job manufacturing space. It was really good for Michigan last week against Central Michigan. It was not great at times for Michigan against Oklahoma. Can we go bring ball carriers down? I thought TJ Metcalf was really good in that department against Central Michigan. It feels like it's going to be a really, really big storyline here is how well we come up and tackle in space and not allow these wide receivers to get loose after the catch. Then lastly, how about Rod Moore's impact? If Poggi gets up there and says, we think Rod Moore is going to be able to go against Nebraska, I'll just be frank. I would be surprised if we saw Rod Moore in this football game because he got the bye week coming up, and then maybe it makes most sense to have him return after the bye week. We'll see how that plays out. I think if they wanted to play Rod Moore against Nebraska, I think they would have played him a little bit more against Central Michigan. Regardless of the fact, when Rod Moore's ready, I think he's going to have an impact. And here's the reasoning behind that. It's not like we have a problem at safety. Brandon Hillman's been really, really good. I think Jaden Mangum has been pretty dang good. I think Mason Curtis has been pretty dang good. And so you have guys that you trust. There's no reason to force Rod Moore on the field. So when I think Rod Moore does take the field, we feel like he's adding to our defense. Hey, we say it all the time with Rod Moore. His impact on the football game goes well beyond the plays that he can individually make. He's that coach of the defense. I think he's one of the higher football IQs that you'll see in the entire country. I think there are things that Michigan can do to win this football game, and it feels really important that Michigan goes out and does. And number one, because you want to go into your bye week 3-1 as a top 20 team in the country. But number two, you want to show us Michigan fans and really give Bryce Underwood the confidence that this offense can go on the road and score against defenses like Nebraska. Feels big, going to be really big. There's a reason that spread's sitting around 2.5 points. We'll break it down after it happens. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.